Hello, everyone, and welcome to Freckle Science and Social Studies webinar. Today, we're going to be digging into all of the wonderful resources that Freckle has to offer you with our Science and Social Studies units. I'm excited to share all of those resources with you today. So let's dig in. To begin, I am Jill Duskulski, and I'll be sharing our presentation with you today. I am an implementation trainer with Freckle, and that means that I work with schools and teachers to get Freckle up and running in their classrooms with their students. On the flip side, I am also still a full-time classroom teacher as well. So I have been able to use these units for both science and social studies that we are going to be talking about today. So I know firsthand exactly how great these resources are and that it's going to be so much easier for you as a teacher to dig into those resources that we have available for you. So to start off, why should we use those units? Well, first of all, they are hands-on interactive for your students. A lot of science and social studies curriculums that are out there today are very text-based, and students are just reading about science and social studies from a book, which I know is not a fun time for you or for them. So with Freckle's units, they are hands-on, and we're going to have a variety of activities for students to be engaged with for science and social studies. Next, it is a huge time saver for you as a teacher. Plan times are short and your needs are many. So Freckle has all of the resources that you'll need to teach these units all together and organized for you. So it's so easy to implement them in your classroom. And lastly, the units and activities are so engaging for students. Your students are going to love science and social studies when using Freckle's units. So let's take a look at what those look like so that you can discover how awesome they would be to use in your classroom. So with that, I'm going to hop into Teacher Dashboard. And when we're in our dashboard logged into our accounts, we're going to look over on the left sidebar here. So you'll notice that in the subject area portion on the bottom, we have is where we'll access social studies and science. So today we're going to be starting off with science, then we'll head into social studies. So we can explore some of those units and you can see firsthand what we have available for you. So as soon as I click on science, it's going to open up all of our science units. You'll notice that in terms of structure of the page that we have a search box on the top. So great resource to use. You can just type in whatever content area you're looking for a unit on and then search through Freckle's resources. Next, we also have our Jump To section. So we have categorized all of our science units into these different subject areas, those different components of science. So once we go here, you can just click and jump to that specific area of science. And then you'll be able to see our individual tiles. So you can see we have lots of different topics that you can use when it comes to units. Now, these units are just kind of the big title for our units. Once we click in here is where we're going to see the breakdown of the whole unit, which I'll show you in just a second. But first, I want to draw your attention to the structure of these unit tiles. So as a teacher, when I am looking for resources to use, I need to know exactly what's going to be involved with each of these units. So when you look at these tiles, we have our title. And then you'll notice as soon as I hover over those tiles, it's going to give me an overview of the topics that are being introduced. So this way you can just get a quick glance before you actually click and head into the unit itself. Here you'll also notice that we have a grade level band for each of our units. So within this forces and interactions content area, we are looking at a grade band for K to 2, 3 to 5, and grades 6 through 8. And that's pretty typical for all of our units. We'll have a couple that are maybe specific to grades 4 and 5 that you'll see thrown in there. But typically we'll have those 3 set grade level bands. And then underneath those grade level bands is where you'll see our next generation science standard alignment. So here's where you'll be able to pull those specific standards that you might be looking for and pop those into your lesson plans. Now you'll notice that in our K2 band, the alignment is kindergarten. And even though that's going to be aligned for K2, many of the articles and resources are going to be able to be adaptive as well as appropriate for students of all of those grade levels. Same goes for the rest of the grade bands as well. This is a specific 3rd grade standard, but all of those resources can be used for other grade levels as well. So let's hop into a unit and see what we have for you. To hop into a unit, we're going to click on View Assignable Activities. And once we do that, it's going to take us into the unit. So right now we're going to be looking at forces and motion. And for all of the units themselves, they're going to be organized in the same way. We're going to start off with that lesson overview, head into general materials, and then move into all of our lessons that we have available for that unit. The overview is just going to be that quick short paragraph so that you kind of get an idea about what's going to be included in the unit and what students are going to be doing in the unit as well. General materials is going to be suitable for the unit overall as a whole. So each of these is going to have a materials list, which is one of my favorite parts of these science units. So when I open up the materials list, it's going to break it down by lesson so that you can have a little checklist to know exactly what you are going to need for each of the lessons that are a part of this unit. Great thing for planning ahead, especially with science where we typically need some more materials to work with to complete investigations and other activities. Now, when we talk about other materials, we are not talking about anything crazy that you're going to have to go to a science-specific store and get materials for. All of our items and materials that you're going to need for our lessons are going to be general household items, things that you're going to have around your school, perhaps from older science kits that have just kind of been collecting over the years. So you can see here 2 balls of different sizes. They have some suggestions for you. Pencils, tape, straws, push pins, balloons. So just some general things that are going to be really easy for you to gather and easy to use as well. So you'll always want to make sure that we have this materials list available so that you are ready to rock and roll with those lessons. Other resources that you're always going to see are going to be the journal entries and the vocabulary as well. So these are great resources that you can incorporate at any point throughout the unit to work on some more literacy-based activities with your students that can be incorporated into science. And then same thing for literature connections as well. We're going to have a list of books and that topic that's related to it. So these are something that you can maybe check out from your library and incorporate into the lessons or just have extra so students are even more engaged with their science unit as well. After we've kind of overviewed those general materials, especially that materials list, then we head into our lessons. So when we're looking at individual lesson boxes, they're going to have several activities that are incorporated within the lesson. So we'll have that title, our time estimation as well, and then it's also going to break down that time even further into those separate activities. So the great thing about these units is that you can totally customize this to meet your needs. So an introduction, probably a good lesson to start with. And then the next one is pushes and pulls. Maybe that's something your students need. Maybe it's something that they don't need. So you can really customize the lessons as a whole, as well as the individual activities that are a part of the lesson. So really great resources for teachers based on every need that you might have. Maybe you need lots and lots of resources, or maybe you're just looking for some supplemental resources. So here in this first lesson, you will see that there are a variety of activities. So first we start off with a video, then there is an article about Sir Isaac Newton that your students can dig into, and then lastly there's an interactive activity to really get students starting to be engaged with the content, taking a look at curiosity with scientific discovery. So you can already see how that's going to connect with Isaac Newton and forces and motion. Most importantly, with our science resources is that everything that you need for all of your individual lessons is going to be easily accessible right in this lesson 1 area. So to watch the video, I can click and I'll be able to play that video right away.
Welcome to the United States Army. My name is Sergeant Newton, and I will be your drill sergeant during basic training. For the next 10 weeks,
So as you can see, it's going to be a fun, engaging video for your students that will pull them into that content and make it much more interesting than other scientific videos might be for them. For your article, we have our button right here that you can assign the article right from the lesson. So one important thing to keep in mind is that in order for your students to read an article at their just right level, students must first take the pretest on their student dashboard. So students can do this by clicking on library in the ELA section, and then it's going to automatically prompt them to take a pretest. Now that pretest is just going to be 3 short passages that they will read and then answer comprehension questions about. And that way Freckle is going to be able to find a just right level for your students. And now that piece is going to be very important for you when you go to assign this article. So when you are assigning the article, you have the option to assign it at multiple levels. So as you can see here, this article is written at multiple levels, and the goal of this is so that way your students, no matter what reading level they might be at, and no matter what grade level you're teaching this to of students, that way students can all access the content. Students who need more of a challenge can have a higher level text. Students who are going to need a lower level text are going to have that option as well. But either way, your students are all going to be reading about Sir Isaac Newton and being able to engage in conversation with each other on similar content. So I always preview these articles first just so I can check and make sure it's going to be something that's good for my students. And then when you're ready to assign, we just click on that assign button. Now clicking on the assign button is going to take you through the process of actually assigning the article. All right, now for actually assigning this article to students. The first thing you'll notice is that we have to select our assignment type. So we do have 2 options for these articles for you. The first box you'll see checked is reading. So we want students to read the article and answer questions about it. So that's definitely going to be checked. Another optional assignment that you can add for your students is the writing. That is going to be the written response, and students will be answering the prompt that you were able to see in that article preview. So if you do want that, we're just going to check that box as well. And then students will get both the article to be read and answer questions about and the written response to respond to in their My Tracker or backpack. However, if you just want that reading, then you can just leave that one checked only. The next section is where we're deciding what level of text the article is going to be assigned to students at. So you'll notice that our first option here, which is the recommended one, is adaptive level. So this means that all of your students are going to be getting an article that is going to be at as close as possible to their current Freckle level as possible. And so this is what we recommend because this is going to allow all of your students to access the same content, but at their appropriate level. We have students in our classrooms who are reading all over the place. And so this way, everyone can access the content. However, you do still have the option to click on this drop down if you want all of your students to read the same article at the same level. You can also choose that option as well. You'll just go through and click the level of article that you want your students to get. However, like I mentioned, the most bang for your buck is going to be definitely with that adaptive level. So students are going to get that article appropriately for their comprehension level. These are going to be your two big components that you need to check while you're creating an assignment. The next is your nice and easy part, where we're just choosing our class that we're assigning this to and then what students we're assigning this to. So once you've selected your class, and this is where if you're going to assign it to your whole science class, we can easily click that select all button and it's going to automatically check all of the students in your class for you. On the flip side, maybe you have just a few students in your class that you're assigning this to, so you are able to individually click on students as well and just send those students that article. But let's say for this example, I want my whole science class to read it. So above, you'll notice I did choose adaptive level. So this is where you can actually see what level of the article that each of your students are going to be receiving it at. So you can see here, I have a lot of students who are getting the 2C level. I do have a couple with the 3C. And as I continue to scroll, I can even see some are getting 5B, some are getting 7A. So this is where that differentiation piece is really seen, so that way you know exactly what level students are getting the article at. However, maybe I know that this is going to be a little bit too hard for this particular student. If that's the case, you do have the autonomy to click on the drop down and you can actually select what level that you want a certain student or a couple of students to get the article at as well. So keep that in mind, even if you are going to be choosing that adaptive level, which we recommend, you can still as well change some of those levels. Once we've made sure all of our students are selected, everybody has the correct level, then we're just going to click on that assign button. And then this is going to be ready to rock and roll for your students to read and complete the questions in their backpack or their My Tracker. As we continue on, you'll notice that there's a variety of activities and that most importantly, all of those activity resources are going to be right here, readily available for you. So one that stands out to me is my pushes and pulls scavenger hunt. When I click on activity resources, it's going to give you as the teacher the lesson guide. So you can know exactly what needs to be printed, kind of what the suggested process is for this lesson in particular. And you'll continue through your teacher guide, and then you'll get to that student component. So this portion you'll just print out, make copies, and then you'll have that ready to go for your students. How awesome is that? Don't have to go search the internet everywhere. We've just got everything nice and organized for you right here. So that's a good hands-on activity, the scavenger hunt. There's also some videos and articles for this lesson as well. As we continue going through, we also have some exploration activities. So for this one, they're going to be exploring with marbles to determine how mass affects the speed of an object. And again, you'll see we can just keep going and keep going. So lots of great resources. Again, there's so many wonderful resources that there's a lot of teachers that always ask, well, how can I teach all of this? I only have 30 minutes a day to teach science. So that's where you as the teacher have the autonomy to pick and choose what components are going to work best for you. What's most important is that Freckle has all of the resources readily available for you, so that way you do have the ability to just pick and choose what you want to do. So perhaps this lesson on equal and opposite forces isn't something that's a part of your standards. So you can continue on and find out what else there is available. I do want to point out that as we get to the end of the unit and we finish with all of these lessons, the last two lessons are going to be special, separate lessons. So when we get to the end, all of these science units have a design engineering challenge as well as a unit assessment. So our design engineering challenge is a great opportunity to incorporate STEM into your classroom, as students will always be going through that engineering design process and working to build something. So in this case, they're going to be applying their knowledge of forces in motion to create Rube Goldberg machines. And again, all of those resources are there for you. A video to engage your students in what they're going to be doing, an article they can read to learn more about these machines that they're going to be creating, and then the activity resources for you and your students to use during that activity. So that's a great option at the end of the unit. But also, if you prefer a more traditional unit assessment, we have that available as well. And these are going to be really great for NGSS standards because the unit assessments are going to be focused on student understanding of the content. And so there's going to be specific tasks that are associated with each of the topics that were taught within the units. So you can see we're not just going multiple choice here. Students are really going to have to prove their understanding, which creates a better assessment for you as a teacher. Heading back into our unit overview, we have reached the end of the unit. So, as you can see, lots of materials that are readily available for you. Next, we're going to transition over to social studies. With social studies, you'll notice that our units are structured very similar layout to science. So the usage will be the exact same, searching for that topic, jumping to topics, as well as those overviews with our grade level bands and topics for each of the units. So as I scroll through, I can easily see what is available for me to teach. And you'll notice that our grade level bands go up quite a bit higher when it comes to social studies. So we have a 5 to 10 grade band, we've got 9 to 12, 6 to 12. So you're really going to have great opportunities for older students as well to go through several of these units. And while we're here, I'm going to point out one of my favorite units, which is the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. All of these units and lessons are very similar to science, where we're going to have so many different types of activities that are most importantly engaging our students. So hands-on activities, literacy-based activities, all of those same great things that we just saw in science are going to be available for social studies as well. So same structure as science here. Again, we have our overview to see what's going to be coming up. We have our general materials, which will be a little bit different than science. We have still vocabulary that you'll be able to highlight, as well as extension topics. And then some other great resources that you would use throughout the whole unit. So this one in particular is a timeline that students will use to track the events from the civil rights movement. As we get into the lessons, again, same type of thing where we have our introduction, our time expected overall, as well as for the individual activities. Now, one of the best things about our social studies units is that they really work to engage students and help them with the content coming alive for them. So this one in particular has identity cards. And so students are going to be able to take on the role of a person from the civil rights movement. So you'll see that there's lots of different people throughout this time period. And so students can learn a little bit more about this time period by taking on this role. And then these will kind of be something you can refer back to as you're working throughout the unit, and can also have students talk about how both sides of the coin are going to be different through experiencing history. So again, those are readily available for you to print. Again, as we continue to go through, we'll have articles and other activities. What I love too with the articles here is that we also have some discussion questions that are going to be available for you. So you can have your students read that article on their own at their own level, as I showed you on science, and then we can come back together as a class and then have a discussion about that content. And so again, these questions all ready to go for you. And then one last special thing about social studies in particular is that we have lots and lots of primary source documents that are built into the lessons. So this one is a gallery walk of Jim Crow laws. We have the organizer that students would be utilizing throughout the gallery walk. And then here we have our primary source documents. So actual historical documents that students can be looking at and learning from history itself. And so you'll see we have a red box highlighting what portion of the text that students need to be focusing on. So this was definitely one of the standout pieces for me as a teacher when using these social studies units as well. As I continue scrolling, you can see lots of other great options, more primary source documents, activities, articles, everything that you could want. Again, lots of wonderful resources to pick from. Lessons, maybe I teach this lesson, but not the next lesson. So that's where it's really perfect for you as the teacher to customize what you use and what you don't use. But the last thing that I want to point out for social studies is the ending lessons of the unit. So the first box here you'll see is our conclusions and assessment box. So we'll have a video to kind of wrap up the unit, and then you'll have two options here. We have a unit exam, and you'll notice that it's in multiple grade bands. So that way it's appropriate for your students as well as the content that you taught from the lesson. And then we'll also have some essay prompts for students to respond to as well. And then lastly, there is the option as well for a final overall project. So some teachers might just use the assessments above. Other teachers might just use the final project. Some teachers use both. Again, it's going to be dependent upon the time and how you want to structure these social studies units in your classroom. And so for this one in particular, students are writing and delivering a speech on something that they're passionate about. So having that connection to several of the public figures that were an important part of the civil rights movement, and then having your students engage with that social studies content in a way that's going to be relevant for them today. So we've got to the end of our social studies unit. As I mentioned, customize that as you need. And then the last thing we're going to talk about today is, when I look back over here on the left, is this student activity button. So this is available for both science and social studies. And you're going to be wanting to use your student activity button whenever you are assigning articles to students. So here I've clicked on student activity, and now I am able to see the work that my students have done in Freckle for science and social studies. So you'll notice that it's going to break it down by student name, and then I've sorted it so I've got looking at just this article that I assigned them. You'll be able to see the level that all of the students were given that article on. And then the last part is going to be the most important part for you, which is the report. So you do get that quick glance of student accuracy, so their overall score on the assignment. But if I click on report, it's going to give me a specific report for that student. So I can see exactly on the right-hand side which questions they got right and which questions they got wrong, as well as what they picked and didn't pick. So be sure that you check out that student activity button anytime that you are assigning work to students from the article, for those article features. As well, there are written responses that are available to be assigned as well. And so this is where you would actually go in and grade those assignments. So you'll notice that my article that the students read is first, and then the written response is going to be after that. So as soon as I click on that grade button, It's going to give me my student response, and I can go through each individual student and look at what they wrote and give them a grade for that specific assignment. So all of those will be housed in one place for you, so you can go through and grade all of those. And with that, we have gone over our science units, our social studies units, as well as our student activity tab. So with that, I thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you are now very excited about Freckle's science and social studies units and what it can offer you and your students in your classroom. So with that, please, as always, reach out to support@freckle.com for any questions, comments, or suggestions that you may have. Thanks so much.